Welcome back. In this AWS deep dive series, we are going to discuss about AWS local zones. So when it comes to AWS geographical infrastructure presence, they have the primary concept called region, which is a kind of a physical location where they have multiple clustered data centers. So each and every data center, the logical data center, they call it as availability zone. So AWS generally consists of a minimum of 3 availability zone, which are physically separate data centers isolated from each other within a particular physical geographic location. Now, not all the metro cities or locations across the globe has got a data center, right? And they also want to have latency sensitive applications which can be accessed by their end users in a much faster way, right? And AWS is providing something called local zones, which is what we are going to discuss in details in this particular session. So let's get into the agenda of this session. So it is going to be a very high deep dive session, and we are also going to discuss few case studies and use cases. So before we get into what is local zone and how do we practically implement it, what are the prerequisites to enable it and use that particular service, we will also have an analogy from a real-time official scenario. We will compare it and understand what exact similarity that we have with that particular challenge and how organizations are overcoming that particular challenge. And after which we will get to understand the different services that are being provided by the local zone and what are the pricing elements associated with local zone. Okay, so let's start with the analogy. See, if you have an office location, let's take an example that this particular office location does not have a local cafe shop or a restaurant. So what is happening with this particular employees? These employees have to travel to a longer distance in order to have a better food or in order to have a cafe uh, in a particular location. So they need to go a long distance, and because of that, there is a productivity impact for the organization. So the project managers who are handling the projects are complaining to the management that there are employees who are taking a long time for lunch and the breaks because of the distance that they have to travel and then get their food. Okay, so the organizations can handle this scenario in multiple different ways. See, for example, if they have a space, they can have a cafeteria where they can provide the what do you call the desserts or whatever the uh, lunch or food for the in their own canteen that can help them improve the productivity and reduce the time the employees take for their lunch and for the tea breaks, right? Or else if multiple companies in that particular locality have a similar challenge, they can also have a food court in the same office building, or they can also have a nearby food court which can be consumed by multiple organizations who are having a similar challenge of productivity impact because of people because of their employees traveling to longer distance to have a cafe break or coffee break or maybe even a lunch break. So they can overcome that by having a food court which is very closer to all these organizations. So this is a very similar scenario where we have local zones, where we have availability zones, and we can also have outpost in AWS concept. So we will get to compare that on how AWS overcomes this challenge, right? For the applications which are very sensitive in nature, when the latency increases, the application might take a lot of time to process, or the graphics rendering might not be of very good quality if the latency increases for some of the application. So for such applications, AWS are providing you the edge offering in 3 different options. One, the AWS Outpost can be deployed in your own data center, and you can bring the AWS kind of experience in your own data center. Or you can have a nearby data center, which is a kind of AWS facility, which is again a kind of fully furnished, fully established infrastructure deployment. But that will not have all the services, but it will have a kind of compute, storage, database, and selective services that are available for the application to be run and consumed in a nearby data center. which can help you to have a very less latency. For example, if you want to reach a nearby region in a particular country, you might take on an average it might be like 40 to 60 millisecond. But then if you are connecting those applications from the local zone, it takes kind of 5 to 10 millisecond. Maybe like the main objective of having a local zone is to provide applications with single digit latency, single millisecond latency, right? So that's what you are going to get with local zones. So local zones are coming from various locations. So I will take some examples. We will talk about wavelength in a particular different deep dive session. So customers are having certain applications where they want to have reduced latency. So they can go for outpost or wavelength zone or local zone. So most of the populated largely populated locations or industry centers will opt for this local zones. Even if you take India, like locations like Delhi, Kolkata, Chennai, Bangalore are having local zones. So whereas Mumbai and Hyderabad, they've already got a region, so where they've got a physical data center availability zone. So the people or the consumers are having a larger data centers option there. But then, for example, people like from the IT centers, IT hub like Bangalore, they don't have a local availability zone. Instead, they are being serviced by AWS with a local data center, the local zone. Similarly, we have a large metro city in Kolkata and in Chennai where there are also a lot of consumers, so they can also run applications in the local zone, and each local zone will have a parent zone tied together. So why there is a parent zone which is tied together? See, not all the services are available in the local zone. For some of the services where they need to consume it from the parent region like S3 or DynamoDB, they can connect it in a very high speed network. So AWS has established a very high network backbone from your local zone to the parent region. So whatever the services that you're consuming from the local zone, you can consume it from the local zone, whereas the services that are not available in the local zone, they can consume it from the parent region. Okay, so local zone is an extension of your AWS parent region, and you can create a subnet and a network within your local zone, and the systems that are hosted on your parent region can connect to each other like a local data center. So local zones are a type of infrastructure deployment. It's a kind of data center deployment from AWS. So these are all AWS data center locations which are very close to locations like the metro cities or the large cities with larger population, industry sectors, IT hub, latency sensitive applications, whichever industry which is demanding this latency sensitive workloads. Even if there is a location sensitive application for meeting out data residency or regulatory requirement, even this large local zones can be utilized. So local zones are logical extension of a parent region. So we will get to understand that in a while. So it is getting closer to a larger population or an industry sector, and low latency applications. Maybe there are a lot of use cases. For example, video analytics application, online gaming, virtual desktops can also run from local zone. Virtual workstations can be created here. You can do a lot of live streaming or even AR, the augmented reality or virtual reality applications can also be hosted on your latency sensitive workload. So if you take this local zones for an example, the very first local zone, it came in Los Angeles. Okay, why exactly Los Angeles? You should have that question. You might have that question, right? So where is Hollywood? Hollywood is in Los Angeles, right? Where there is a lot of media transaction, where there is a lot of entertainment activities going on. So AWS has recently launched the second local zone in Los Angeles itself. So that's how the expansion is happening. There is a lot of demand for having a local zones. See, before having a Los Angeles data center, so AWS was as providing the services either from the East US or from the West US locations earlier. But now the people in the companies in the Los Angeles locations have their own local data center, and that too they have a cluster of data center now. So they got two local zones where they can run their services in a very highly available option, and they can consume services with very high agility and speed. Right, so let's understand it. There were a lot of challenges for some customers, especially they want to have a location or a data center which is closer to the end users or the data sources. So that is what they had as a challenge, and AWS has helped overcome those challenges like low latency workloads or data residency, regulatory requirements related workload, or some of the modernization initiatives were not able to meet out by some of the customers because they were having a lot of latency from their location to the AWS parent region. But now, after having a local zone, they were able to overcome all these challenges in a cost effective way with AWS local zones. So we will get to understand how AWS local zones is helping customers with extension of the parent region in with some use cases. Okay, some of the use cases that I've already highlighted. So like media and entertainment, especially as I highlighted, Los Angeles has got two data centers now. So and online gaming applications, electronic design automation application, advertisement ad tech companies, the virtual desktop workloads, virtual workstations, AR, augmented reality and virtual reality applications, machine learning application, and even public sector and healthcare. They also have a lot of low sensitive low latency applications, latency sensitive applications, which are being hosted on AWS local zone, and they are getting a lot of benefit in terms of the bandwidth and the experience that the end users are having. It is providing a lot of value add. So that's the reason local zones are getting expanded across the globe. And in India itself, we have got four local zones in shorter duration, like one in Chennai, Bangalore, Delhi, Kolkata. So these are the four locations, metro cities where we have got local zones. So local zones are a very big success in many of the countries and locations. So I was part of one of the recent use case where one of the regulated gaming workloads have to run on AWS platform. So see, a lot of federal, state, local, tribal laws are there. See, for example, if you take India as a country, um, some of the concepts, for example, if you take the lottery concept, lottery is not available in all the state. Even the state that I'm part of in Tamil Nadu, there is no lottery, so it has been banned since last 20 years or so. Okay, but then there are some states like Kerala or Assam or West Bengal, there are lottery concepts still being consumed. Even in big cities like Maharashtra also, you still have lottery concept. So if you want to, let's take a regulatory gaming workload example. So a lot of these applications, the real money gaming application, or gambling, or sports betting, or horse racing, or casino, or poker, or fantasy sports application, they are subjected to federal, state, local, or tribal law. So which means for the customer, if they want to run this application, if they want to run this application within their jurisdiction, they need to have a local data center where they can run with all the data residing in within that particular state or within that particular confined location. So even the Federal Wire Act in the United States, it says you cannot have the activities happening across the state lines. So which means there is a regulatory requirement which states that the activities has to happen within that particular location. See, not all the activities, but the data at least should have to remain within that jurisdiction. So those kind of activities can be hosted on local zone, right? And they can have the much better experience out of it. So what are the different services that are being available or made available in local zones? So it depends on, or it differs between local zones to local zone, but many of these local zones have got containerized options like ECS, EKS. They've got file systems like FSX, EBS options. They've got relational databases, Elastic Cache, EMR. So not limited to these services, and these services can be combined with the parent region services. For example, if you want to run these services from Delhi, the Delhi users will have very good latency, like a single millisecond latency to these applications. And on the back end, they can also connect to some of the applications hosted on the Mumbai region, like the S3 buckets or the DynamoDB tables can be connected to your applications, and they can be hosted from your parent region. So these kind of combination of use cases are being consumed by different customers. So you can have a local zone as an extension of your parent region. So I will also show you how to enable these options. I'm not sure if everyone has seen this. So if you log into AWS, if you go to EC2 dashboard, you won't see the local zones by default. So what you have to do in order to enable it, you have to go to the zones here, and under the zones, you have the option to enable Kolkata or Delhi, which are the local zones as part of the parent region Mumbai. So in my earlier demo, I used Delhi, but what I will do now is, in the interest of learning, I will enable Kolkata as a local zone. Go to the manage group, and you can enable it. So you can enable it either from the EC2 dashboard, or you can also enable the same from your VPC dashboard. If you go to the VPC console, even on the right side, you will have the zone here, and you can go and opt in the Calcutta location if in case you want to, and you can update it. So either you can do it from the EC2 console, or you can also opt it from your VPC console. So there are two options, and you can also opt out if you don't want the location to be consumed. You can also opt out, but you have to remove all the associated resources from that particular local zone before you are opting out. So these local zones are tied to a parent region. The parent region is nothing but the Mumbai region is the parent region where you will consume larger amount of product and services. But in your local zone, you will have a limited set of products and services, which is more than sufficient to meet out the data residency and the low latency application requirements. Right. So after you enable it, give it some time and then give it a refresh, and you will see that the service is getting enabled. It will take some time. Okay, so give it few seconds for the options to get enabled. I will Meanwhile, I will just walk you through a couple of use cases. So what you can do is, when you solution it, you can also have a direct connection to your local zone, or you can also connect the local zone through a self-hosted VPN from your on-premises data center, or you can also combine with transit gateway. Through transit gateway, you can connect multiple regions or multiple geographical locations using direct connect gateway and transit gateway. So you can mix and match the network connections to your local zone. Even you can have a VPN server connecting to your on-premises location, which can be hosted on a local zone. See, for example, if you have a customer who want to have a public facing workload, you can also create a separate internet gateway for your local zone subnet. And also you can have an application load balancer, which can be connected to a Route 53 zone, and you can access it from the public internet. So you can also have a public facing workload, or if you want to have a complete private facing workload, you can remove the internet gateway and you can allow the connection through the Route 53 private zone, directly accessing the application load balancer through the private subnet, and you can have a very highly resilient private workload hosted across your parent region and the local zone, so that you can have a very high resilient private workload setup as well. And even if you want to have multiple workloads across multiple subnets, you can also create multiple subnets and have different workloads hosted into a VPC concept here. So I will show you how to create multiple subnets in your VPC. So once after you enable it, give it a refresh, and then go to here and give it a refresh. It should be opted in by now. So I did not opt in this console. Even you can do it here if you want to opt in, but I've done it in the EC2 console. You can opt in for a particular local zone, either from the EC2 console or from your VPC console. Once after you opt in, you can go and directly create a subnet, if you want to have a separate VPC created, well, you can do that. Or if you want to create it, create a direct subnet in an existing VPC, you can do it. So go and create a subnet. Now I want to create a subnet in your Kolkata location, Kolkata local zone. I will just call it as Kolkata or CCU, whatever short form you want to have. You can just call it by the code, or you can directly give it the city name. And I can just go and select the Kolkata region, the local zone data center, in fact. And here I can just go and select the subnet I want, and I can just give a specific subnet for my data center /20 4000 IP address should be fine, and I can create it. So this is how you can create a subnet. Once after you have a subnet created in Kolkata local zone, so this is created in the Kolkata CCU 1A data center. You can go back to your EC2, give it a refresh, and if you want to create a launcher instance, now you will be able to see the option to create a server or create a workload in Kolkata data center, the Kolkata local zone. So where do we find it? If you are just editing this network settings and enter the preference, you will see Kolkata subnet 01, as well as if you want to create it in Delhi, you can also create it in Delhi. So whatever location you want to create, you can have multiple subnets across for different workloads, or if you want to create two different VPC and have different workloads created, that is also very much possible. And you can have a peering even within your local zone also supports VPC peering. You can have multiple workloads connected to each other through backbone, VPC backbone, which is the peering. Even I have set up, I have done a use case where a customer want to have the S3 bucket connected through the storage gateway. So they want their application to have a very fast, seamless connection. Even you can also do that using this particular storage gateway solution can also be done in the local zone. So you can have an Amazon F3 file gateway on an EC2 instance that can connect to your Amazon S3, where you will get a low latency connection. And for high availability, if you're a solution architect, you can very much architect your solution to have high availability of your applications hosted on servers on local zone plus region, or two different local zone. As I highlighted, Los Angeles has got multiple local zone. You can have two different systems in two different local zone and enable high availability. You can have one server in local zone and one server in AWS Outpost private cloud, or you can have one server in local zone and one server on your own data center. So you can engineer the way you want. You have all these options working out for different customers. Different customers are opting for this high availability solution. So all these are options which you can architect for your application requirement. Now, I will walk you through one more use case which I came across recently. So, you know, Perth, right? It's a city in Australia where a lot of energy companies are, where it is a hub for energy companies. They have a large base of geoscience users accessing from within their city offices. See, if they are trying to connect from Perth to Sydney, it takes a lot of time for them to connect to their application. So it takes almost 45 to 50 millisecond, which is huge for some of their geoscience users. It is causing a lot of problems because they want to have a lot of graphics happening. They will connect to a graphics enabled remote workstation for doing their regular activity. So now, after the local zone is introduced in Perth location, they are able to access their workstation, or they are able to access their applications with only 2 to 5 millisecond, which is drastically good improvement, right? And what they've done is they have enabled this AWS local zone, and they have consumed the service called nice DCV. And there is a specific, not all the instance types are available in the local zone, but selective instances are available. Even, for example, the graphics option with the nice DCV instance is also available in local zone, which is what they are consuming for their local users. The geoscience users from the Perth location, from the energy companies, they are able to use this dedicated workstation for their end users, and it is made available with very low network latency, right? If you look at here, it is available with an average speed of 5 millisecond, which is drastical improvement from their earlier experience of 50 milliseconds is what they've got. So similarly, a lot of different industry sectors and a lot of different companies are benefiting from the local zone. So this is one example, Supercell, which is a real-time multiplayer gaming company. So where they have deployed their game servers on the local zone, which has drastically reduced the latency that their end users are having earlier. So they are managing their on-premises infrastructure earlier, but now after started consuming local zone, they have migrated all their gaming servers to the nearby local zone, which has helped them a lot. Similarly, Netflix, they are a content creation company, and a lot of artists are connecting to the AWS regions earlier, but now with the direct connect circuit established between their own data center and the local zone, they are able to connect with just 1 to 2 millisecond latency, and a lot of their animation activities are being done. I'm not sure how many of you heard about the Nimble Studio. So a lot of customers are consuming this Nimble Studio solution from AWS. It is very popular. It is doing a lot of acceleration for some of their content creation for customers. So it is providing the artist with an option to produce visual effects or animated videos, or even the gaming companies can consume it. So it is a kind of Nimble Studio provides a unified interface where you can onboard users, assign applications, and you can provide permissions within few seconds. You don't have need to have AWS experience. Nimble Studio requires zero AWS experience, and you can set it up in just 5 minutes. It's a kind of studio experience where the end users can provide a very high quality animation videos in few seconds. So even a lot of content creation companies are using this Nimble Studio. So I was just referring to that because we are talking about Netflix, which is a content creation company. They have got a lot of benefits from local zone. Similarly, one more example, this is a kind of hybrid option scenario where the customer was able to drastically simplify the migration process by adopting local zone as a hybrid deployment scenario. So let's conclude the session by discussing the pricing. So there is no fees for enabling the local zone. Only after you consume some services from the local zone, you have to pay for it. So definitely there is a price difference between the parent zone and the local zone. Local zone, it is a kind of selective option provided to the specific metro cities. So the pricing will be little higher. The more the local zones, then the more the consumption, you will start realizing the benefits. So for now, you are getting on demand and savings plan option even in the local zone, which can help you do a cost optimized workload option. And even some of the local zones are coming up with spot instances, which is not available in all the local zone. But for now, local zones are also starting to provide you the bidding option where you can get a lot of benefits, right? Data transfer cost, yeah, so outbound cost outside of a region is chargeable. Similarly, like the charges are very much similar to your availability zone and local zone. Okay, so thank you for listening, and we will connect in the next session, possibly for wavelength zone discussion.